All right, Tim. Action.
Hello, my name's Tim Malone, and I'm a history teacher. Well, I'm retired, but once a history teacher, always a history teacher. And I'm taping my lectures and putting them up on YouTube. Tim Malone History Lectures on YouTube. And today we're going to talk about the Industrial Revolution, the most important event in history. I realize that's quite a mouthful, and a lot of historians shy away from such proclamations. However, part of being a historian is the ranking of events. Obviously, it's controversial. It depends on the historian. Obviously. However, I've decided as a historian that the Industrial Revolution is the most important event in human history. Now, again, a lot of historians would disagree with such a sharp statement, because what in effect I'm saying is that the Industrial Revolution cuts human history into two halves, before and after. And to a certain extent, you could make the argument, I could make the argument as a Industrial Revolution guy, that that's where we should start history classes. Yes, before the Industrial Revolution, everything is just prelude. And then comes the Industrial Revolution. Cuts the timeline into two. That's what I'm saying. Now, I have doubts about that myself, but it's a way to come to grips with the world we live in today, I think. I think it's fairly obvious that industrialization rules technological development. I mean, it's a theory of history, technological determinism. You want to find out about a civilization, a culture, a country? Show me your tools. Show me your hardware. Show me your machines, and I'll tell you the thoughts in your head and the values that you espouse. It all starts with the tools, the machines. There's been a lot of science fiction written since the Industrial Revolution, of course, about the machines taking over. And I guess my point of view is the machines have already taken over. The machines rule, and they have for several hundred years. The Industrial Revolution. Now, sort of to make this point, I show this book from the year 2000, 1999-2000, by Time Life, The Life Millennium, the 100 most important events and people in the past 1,000 years, from 1,000 to 2,000. They did a little thing, and of course these are journalists, newspaper people. This is kind of pop history, but I liked it because it shows the ranking that historians do, whether they want to admit it or not. One of the things historians do is they rank the importance of events. And obviously, I'm saying the most important event in history is the Industrial Revolution. And here, the Time Life doesn't agree with me. The number one event of the 1,000 years from 1,000 to 2,000, according to Time Life, is the invention of the printing press. Now you're saying, well, wait, that's technology. Yeah, it is. They have 1455 here, when Gutenberg in Germany printed the Bible on a printing press. This is a defensible number one event in the 1,000 years, or even through all human history, the printing press, the print revolution. I understand, this is defensible. Number one, the printing press. Number two, Columbus discovers America, 1492. This is also a defensible choice as the most important event of all time. Changed everything, Columbus. Number 3, according to Time Life, the Protestant Reformation. Oh man, I don't know about that one so much. The Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther, and the breakup of the Catholic Church's monopoly on religious functions. Protestant Reformation. But here we go. Number 4, the Industrial Revolution. And they have it here, 1769. 1769. That's a rather specific, I mean, couldn't you say 1770? Couldn't you say 1800 when you're looking at the whole span of human history? No, they say 1769. Rather specific. Now again, I'd put a 1 here. This is more the most important event, not just of the millennium from 1000 to 2000, but of all time. 1769. Why 1769? Because that's when a fellow named James Watt in England patented his steam engine. Interesting. I guess I could go along with that. The steam engine, the Watt steam engine. Now there'd been steam engines before, Newcomen, right, for the early 1700s. They had steam engines at coal mines in England. They were such cumbersome contraptions that the only place it paid to have one was at a coal mine, because that's where the coal was. What Watt did was he reinvented the steam engine, and you could put it on rails, or you could put it in a ship, or it paid to have it at the factory and haul the coal to the steam engine. The steam engine. Mechanical power, replacing human and animal power. Mechanical power. Chemical reactions. The steam engine. 1769. Now, you can argue with that, the invention of the spinning jenny and the power loom, the first factories, but it's about the same time. The Industrial Revolution, late 1700s in England. Time and place. The Industrial Revolution. You can see it still. Obviously, we're living it today. You might say that we're involved in a technological revolution right now with cell phones and artificial intelligence and the digitization of everything. The Industrial Revolution, the most important event, and again, when I do my lecture on history, we'll talk about events. Event, a more or less important occurrence, an event. However, it's a strange word and it's a strange concept, because what I'm saying is that the Industrial Revolution is still going on. 200 and what now, 30 years? 240 years after its advent, if we're going to accept the idea of England steam engine, 1770s, it's still going on. So what kind of event is that? It's a problematic term, event, in history. When it happens, it changes everything, and the word revolution is apt. Now again, there's historians that disagree with that. They say, oh, look back. Well, you can say the invention of the printing press in 1455 was a necessary prequel to the Industrial Revolution 200 years later, or 250 years later. We all understand the falling dominoes idea of history, and the sort of artificial nature of ranking events and cutting the timeline. It's an artificial effort, but historians, in my opinion, have to do it. Historians have to rank events. The Industrial Revolution, it's a theory, it comports with the theory of history, which I talked about earlier, technological determinism. Show me your tools, show me your machines. And we're still in the backwash of it. The Industrial Revolution started in England in the late 1700s. Time Life says 1769. We talked about that, the invention of the steam engine. I think that's as good dating as any. The results of the Industrial Revolution. Number one, urbanization. Whoa. Urbanization, the rise of the city. Since the agricultural revolution in 8,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, where human beings gave up hunting and gathering and settled and started systematically growing plants, thus creating a division of labor that created a leisure class, an artistic class, a military class. The agricultural revolution, ever from there all the way up to the Industrial Revolution, 90% of human beings lived in the countryside and produced the food, and 10% lived in cities. The Industrial Revolution comes along, and within 100 years, less, there's a complete turnaround. I mean, look at the United States today. 90% live in cities or suburbs, and 10% live in the country and till the soil. A complete reversal in a relatively short period of time. Urbanization. And that process is still going on in parts of the world. The Industrial Revolution happens in phases, and different parts of the world have undergone it at different times. And there's parts of the world where this situation is playing out right now, the early results of the Industrial Revolution. Number two, results of the Industrial Revolution. The factory system of production. Factories, mass production, assembly lines, machines making products, tended by human beings. But the machines do the work. Mass production, thousands and thousands of widgets. That's what the econ classes always call the thing being produced. Widgets. But everything, mass production, machine production, it revolutionizes, everything. It revolutionizes the way human beings live and how well they live. 3, the rise of the middle class. Again, industrialization creates industrial titans. John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie and Bill Gates. Creates fabulously wealthy industrial titans. Yet, there were always aristocrats of one kind or another. There were always fabulously rich people. But what the Industrial Revolution does is it accentuates the middle class. The middle class rises to power with industrialization. Now, it may not seem that way in a lot of places. A new socioeconomic class structure. The old aristocrats, at the time of the French Revolution, less than 1% of France was aristocrats. 1% ruling 99%. Well, usually in feudal societies, in ancient societies and feudal societies, there was the aristocrats, the king and the nobles, and then they had about 10% soldiers, policemen, henchmen, tax collectors. So it's always been, for a long time, till the Industrial Revolution, it was always 10% ruling 90%, or less than 10% ruling 90%. It turns out that in order to run a mass production, factory production, urbanizing society, you need a strong middle class. Now, the middle class was always there in the Middle Ages. It was small. It was about 10%. Merchants, skilled craftsmen, farm. If the system, like in England, allows allowed small farmers to own their own land. There always was a middle class, but with industrialization, the middle class grows and comes to dominate. Mostly. The rise of the middle class. And thus the rise of democratic politics. The middle class, obviously, the aristocracy want oligarchy. According to Aristotle and the Greeks, if the poor take over, they want a tyranny. The middle class, the politics of the middle class are democratic. The rise of democracy, the rise of the idea of human rights. The machines brought the idea that all men are created equal. The steam engine resulted in an ideology of every man should have a vote. It's interesting. It's an interesting concept. Democratic politics. And also the rise of socialism and communism were a result of the Industrial Revolution. Because, Karl Marx, the founders of both communism and socialism, Karl Marx made the observation in the 1820s and 1830s that with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and mass production, the basic needs of human beings, hunger, shelter, had been solved. And that's certainly true today, isn't it? There's no reason for anybody to be hungry in the United States. There just isn't. There's enough. That's one of the things that's so revolutionary about the Industrial Revolution. There's enough. In fact, part of the problems of industrialization is overproduction. Overproduction. This is one of the economic problems raised by industrialization. Too many cars, too many widgets. It's a revolution. The rise of capitalism, the idea of capitalism, and the corporation. And akin to that is the rise of economics. The rise of economics, the rise of this school of thought, this academic discipline that you study, economics. Now, of course, there's books written about the economy of the Roman Empire, the economy of the Greek city-states. But in my opinion, and not just mine, that idea, to take the idea of economics and to project it back on societies that didn't think like that, it's problematic. The rise of economics, profit and loss, supply and demand, and you study that, that's a result of industrialization. That's a result of the Industrial Revolution. Economics. And boy, oh boy, it dominates the thinking of modern man, doesn't it? I mean, everybody knows their net worth. Everybody thinks economically. It's conquered the world. Peoples 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago didn't think like that. We think they thought like that. And of course, to a certain extent they did. There were merchants and peasants, bartered and traded and such. But the rise of economics, the economic mindset, is a result of industrialization. One of the things, a new class structure. And the rise of labor, the rise of capital and labor. Capitalism, economics, and the fact that you build a big factory that employs thousands of people, and they're making widgets, and the owner, Andrew Carnegie, is making a vast amount of money on that. The idea that the workers are going to organize and unite is inevitable. This idea of labor versus capital, this division of the population into two parts, the workers and the owners. It becomes, and again, you can see that today. It's still there. It's a result of the Industrial Revolution. The industrial workers, and now, of course, it's a lot of that is people in cubicles staring at screens, but they're still workers, versus the owners. It dominates. Now, this industrialization happened in England in the late 1700s. However, in the United States, it's generally decided or generally taught that this revolution came to the United States about 100 years later, post-Civil War. Now again, at home, I have 30 different textbooks for the survey classes in American history. They'd send them to me free because they were soliciting my business, these textbook publishers. 30 different textbooks. And all but one of them, because I was writing a paper about this at one time, all but one of them have a chapter on the industrialization of the United States. And they always fit it in post-Civil War, late 1860s to 1900. And here's one called The Triumph of Industrial Capitalism. 1850 to 1890, they have it here. And of course, it's a simplification to say that industrialization in the United States didn't happen until post-Civil War because, again, one of the first industrialized industries, kind of like that, industrialized industries, in England was textiles. The first factories were textile mills in England. Very lucrative. Well, every human being needs clothes. And the English tried to protect the technology, the spinning jennies and the power looms. It was against the law in England to export those technologies. They tried to keep them, but of course, it's sort of a rule. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't keep technology secret. It doesn't happen. So the English tried, but right across the English Channel in Belgium, northern France, western Germany, they started building textile mills of their own almost immediately, and across the Atlantic to the United States. Slater, he went to England and I don't know if this story is true, it's apocryphal, I kind of like it. He hung out at a bar outside of a textile mill, and he befriended English workers and brought one of them back to Rhode Island and built the first textile mill from memory in the United States in the 1790s, not long after this technology had been invented in England. And New England, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, became the center of American industrialization in the late 1700s and early 1800s. So this idea that the Industrial Revolution comes to the United States in the 1870s and 1880s is not true. But there's an increase, exponential increase in industrialization after the Civil War. And of course, the fact that the North was industrialized was one of the reasons it won the Civil War. Industrialization. What a word. Sometimes called development. Development. More developed, less developed countries and societies. The United States, the northern United States was right there, right? England, Western Europe, and the United States. out in front on this turns out to be revolutionary development. Every textbook has a chapter on the triumph of capitalism or the triumph of industrialization, the triumph of technological development in the United States post-Civil War. And again, urbanization, rise of the middle class. You can see that during this period of time. Now, Robert Fogel, a historian, I think he died here recently. He wrote a book about slavery that's famous, Time on the Cross. He's an economic historian, and he talked about the economy of slavery. Famous book, Time on the Cross. He later wrote a book about what he called techno-physio evolution. That not only did the Industrial Revolution do all these, urbanization and rise of the middle class and rise of democracy and human rights, but that it's also changing the evolutionary arc of human beings. That since the Industrial Revolution, human beings are twice as big. In 200 years, or 250 years, human beings living in developed countries, industrialized countries, have doubled their size. And also, I got that wrong. Half again, 50%. What they doubled was their life expectancy. Life expectancy doubled in the last 200 years. And physical size we're half again as big as peasants were in 1300. He says that no species has ever done that before, not even close. Done that evolutionary to themselves in 200 years. That's the blink of an eye, less than the blink of an eye in evolutionary terms. We've taken control of our own evolution, human beings. The only species that's ever done that. Techno-physio-evolution. And of course now we're talking about implants and all sorts of things. I mean, we're just at the beginning of this. And science fiction has delved into this idea of the technological impact, technology's impact on our very lives. The Industrial Revolution, the most important event in human history. I'm there. I'm a technological determinist. I think most Americans are. And there's phases. A lot of people think that there's phases to the Industrial Revolution. It's still going on. And some people think we're in the third or fourth Industrial Revolution. Here's one take on it. 1769 to around 1770, the first 100 years, Industrial Revolution Phase 1. Then 1870 to 1970, and that was steam and coal. The second, 1870 to 1970, division of labor, electricity, mass production, oil, right? Coal's replaced by oil. 1970, electronics, IT, automated production, more automated production. I mean, I live in Belvedere, Illinois, where there was a Chrysler plant for years. And so I knew some Chrysler workers, And one day, one of them said that it looked like what was going to happen to auto manufacturing or any sort of assembly line manufacturing is, how many people will work at the Chrysler plant in Belvedere in 25 years? And he says, one. Some guy will come in the morning and turn it on. The machines will make the machines. That seems to be where we're headed. Sounds like utopia to me. And then the fourth phase of the Industrial Revolution, starting, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, cyber physical systems. And that's what I'm talking about, this techno-physio evolution. And also the digitization of everything. The fact that you can have all human knowledge in the palm of your hand, everything. Is that a revolution? Are we in the midst of another industrial revolution right now? Because it's hard to tell when you're in the midst of an industrial revolution that that's what's happening. It's in retrospect is important in determining these things. But it seems to me that this cell phone thing, this digitization of everything, this techno-physio evolution, we're just in the midst of it. It's an ongoing process. We've jumped on this technological train, and we're on for the ride now. It's going to play itself out. It can't be stopped. Well, of course, maybe nuclear war would stop it. It can't be stopped. And where is it heading? Interesting questions. Yeah, the Industrial Revolution, most important event in human history.